we're here at King's Cross. We've got quite a long journey ahead of us, about a 4-hour journey, but our train lies that way. So I think it's all aboard.
Now, bearing in mind, this is the first time I have ever been to Scotland, let alone Edinburgh, I decide to take the obvious choice of transport, and that is good old-fashioned railway. Now, some people might say, you could have flown there, but then the problem is, it's all about the price, the convenience, and the getting forward to A and B. As I board the train, I'm ready for the exciting journey that lies ahead.
We're all in, so it's just a long journey now up to Edinburgh. So I think it's time to get head down, put some headphones on and sit back and enjoy the journey.
I leave King's Cross in a state of transition. I leave the station on good time. Despite being a few technical problems, I managed to leave King's Cross and into the countryside, and all ready for the long journey that I'm prepared for. But what does Edinburgh actually hold for me? Well, that remains to be seen, until I discover another option of toilets.
Well, this is a surprising turn for the books. It's a toilet, a very small toilet within the train. Cut to next scene.
We arrive in Newcastle some 3 hours after we leave King's Cross. As we travel through the heart of the city, another place that I've always wanted to visit was Newcastle. It's just a shame that my train shot straight through the station and out the other end. I didn't really have much choice to soak up the atmosphere or what Newcastle had to offer, but I got to see that famous bridge. I suppose that's something, at least. As the train leaves Newcastle and through the glorious town of Berwick-upon-Tweed, there was very much hope in sight that Edinburgh was only at least another hour away. That hour zapped by quicker than I could blink my eyes. Most of the time they were firmly shut, but we finally made it to Edinburgh. So I may have made the station, but now I had to actually find my hotel. Well, surprisingly, I booked this quite good. What I managed to do was to book a hotel directly opposite the station, which means everything was in a 2.5 mile radius of where I was. Bit lucky that. But the weather was getting a bit bad, so I made a hasty retreat to my hotel room. On appearance, it was quite a nice room. All mod cons, ironing board, iron. But as I looked out the window, I got a bit of a sight that I wasn't quite expecting. Well, that's what you get when you ask for a sea view. Despite the view not being up to scratch, I decided to have some dinner and then get into bed early to prepare myself for the next day. I wasn't quite sure where I was going to go, so I dawned over the pillow, put the duvet on and went to sleep. Much excitement laid in wait. The next day I was up bright and early, but I was sifting over exactly what I should do on my second day in Edinburgh. I wasted the first day getting there. I took the map. I decided there's only one place I could actually go, and that was the castle. So without further ado, I made a swift exit and got on what they call a local tour bus. Well, it was the only way that I could get round Edinburgh. Well, I weren't going to walk for a start. But the actual loveliness of Edinburgh opened itself up to me on this wonderful journey. The place was bustling with statues, glorious architecture. It was a city of dreams, and the castle adorned in the distance.
Edinburgh Castle, famed for many sieges and Iron Age settlement over the years. Some of the rock there is still from that time. It's an amazing feature that dominates the Edinburgh skyline.
As soon as I walked through the gates, I was blown away by the architecture and the grandeur of how this was built, all on glaciers that had formed over the years. Edinburgh Castle had something that other castles haven't got to offer. Steeped in history, and as I look across the turrets, I saw a beautiful city below me.
It was like a siege palace here. You know, you've got the artillery guns over here, which would have been looking right across the city. So there was always something for everyone to get blown to bits. You know, it's all out there. You see the town. You knew that the defence here was immaculate. You know, the fortification around the edge of the building was great as well. And you just look here. Look, you can see there was no way anyone was getting into this castle.
But as I got further into the castle, I discovered something that would open my eyes up big time.
These are the prisons of war. Some great stuff in here we're going to see, I can guarantee. There's all chains, there's all dungeons, and there's long stairwells. Let's have a little look.
War broke out between Britain and France in 1756, and within a year, the first prisoners of war arrived at the castle. Between 1757 and 1814, well over 1,000 of prisoners were held in the labyrinth of vaults below Crown Square. One of the better known prisoners was Sir Thomas Grey. He was an English knight held in captivity at Edinburgh Castle in 1355. During his imprisonment, he made use of the castle's library and archives. It was there he began writing a chronicle documenting the history of Britain. The prisons wasn't a good place to live. The conditions were bad, and sometimes an uncertainty loomed over the prisoners' heads. Some never to see the light of day again.
These are the prisons of war, and these would have held thousands upon thousands of men over the years. It's a dark, dingy place, and it held many, many prisoners. As you can see from the hammocks that were around here and the things that were left, it only goes to wonder what life would have been like deep, deep in these confines of these prisons.
As we leave the prisons, not that it would give you any nightmares of course, I decided to make my way over to the birthplace of a real king. A room which is devoted to the grandeur and texture of this wonderful castle. The family emblem looms large in the room across the gigantic fireplace. And as we look around, we can see the wonderful splendour that would have adorned this room in the late 1600s. This, of course, was home to many kings and queens, Edinburgh Castle, such as Mary Queen of Scots, but most importantly, James VI. He was the king that ruled the country between 1603 and 1625. Despite having a great deal of illness through his life, he was a king that would make a substantial mark on not just Edinburgh, but the whole of the United Kingdom. The place was lavished. It was full of artwork, full of contemporary colours, and something that would look majestic to any king of England for a start. There were statues, open fireplaces, lovely paintings. I just didn't want to leave. But the thing that I got from this actual place was the amazing place that James VI was born in. He was actually born in this actual room that I'm about to show you. I don't know how any king could have lived in this once he was born. I assumed this was only the fact of where he was actually born and not where he actually spent most of his time, as the room was rather small, as you can see. If this was fit for a king, then it was fit for anyone. I left the birthplace of James VI behind me and went to his Great Hall across the way.
We're inside the Great Hall at the very moment, and we've got a little talk going on back there. Not quite sure what he's saying, but nevertheless, this is the Great Hall. Somewhere where they would have banquet and had dinners for hours and hours and hours. Some very, very grand splendour around. Statues, stained glass windows. It's a magnificent Great Hall.
Allows the fill to drop to the ground. You'll then charge into battle wearing nothing but a shirt. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, with 200 or 300 semi-naked images running forward that can be quite intimidating.
The wonder of the medieval Scotland, the Great Hall was completed in 1511 for King James VI. Great banquets and state events took place in the Great Hall over the years, but unfortunately the king wasn't to see much of this, as he was killed in a disastrous battle in Flodden in 1513. Oliver Cromwell's army captured the castle in 1650 and began a military makeover of the space, turning the Great Hall into the barracks. It later served as a military hospital until the troops were finally marched out in 1886. The hall these days has been restored to its medieval splendour, and the Great Hall today displays many of the weapons and armouries as a hint to its military past. I just wish I could pick up one of these swords and have a little go and toy with a dagger, but unfortunately they were firmly welded down. Whilst in the background I had a guy talking about how to make a kilt from a simple bit of material. I made a hasty retreat once I saw what was beneath the kilt.
As we come down these wonderful steps, these are called the lower defences, and this is where the armies that would have battled here would have been able to get a much wider shot across the whole of Edinburgh, and it would have given much more of a sitting position to try and get the main targets in action. Just through here, they would have got the perfect view to catch their enemies. It's going to be sad leaving Edinburgh behind, but it's time to move on. I've got to get back to the hotel and catch the ghost bus.
I get back to the hotel within good time, have a nice dinner, but then I set out for the most terrifying experience anyone could do on a day in Edinburgh. The city is laced with ghouls and ghosts from the past, haunting the many graveyards, many streets, and the Edinburgh vaults. We take a trip into a haunted graveyard, once commonly referred to as the graveyard of Greyfriars Bobby, the dog who wouldn't leave the graveyard. But why? A 19th century guide took us round with all the usual humour.
So they cut into the finger, thinking they could just snatch the ring off, because surely the anatomy school knows how the finger works. And when they did that, the finger, it came off. That's her back. She sat bolt upright and started screaming, because that's when coma was discovered. She screamed, of course. 2 policemen stormed the cemetery. They arrested the 2 men. She was taken to the local medical school for assistance, and they stated that the body had never been dead. Just because the body wasn't moving didn't mean you were dead. That's why they started using glass and mirrors to check for vapours. They also, of course, gave you the Saved by the Bell system. That small pulley, of course, a bell on here on the surface, attached to an object that would move like a finger or a toe or a penis. And of course, that would, of course, as you move, well, ring.
Later on, someone even offered up their soul to the devil.
So you're going to knock the door 3 times and say, Mackenzie, I offer you my soul. Really enunciate the last word.
I will.
Okay? That was 5 knots, babe. 3.
Sorry. I'm getting carried away.
Now we're up to 9. Okay. That's why they can't count votes in England either. Okay? Right. There you go.
Mackenzie, I offer you my soul.
And another Mackenzie.
Mackenzie.
That one, didn't you, baby? Okay. Sure, that one. Could you go back down to your husband?
I will,
Okay,
thank
I'm
you.
tired of you now.
As the tour moves on, away from the churchyard, we take a little time to look at the famous Greyfriars Bobby, the Skye Terrier who became the 19th century Edinburgh dog that spent 14 years guarding the grave of its owner until he died himself in 1872. A legend that has been primarily covered in many books and many films over the years. The tour ended with the Edinburgh Vaults. It was so dark in there we couldn't film.
Well, that's Edinburgh, all finished. I've literally done all of this in one whole day. Believe it or not, I'm going to get back on the train now. We heard a few ghosts and ghouls noises in the background in the vaults. There was dripping water and stuff like that. There was shuffles, there was a few things going on in there. There could have been paranormal. Greyfriars Bobby, well, wonderful stuff indeed, Has that woman got a curse? Who knows? I know one thing goes, if I don't get going, I'm going to miss my train. Home, back to good old London.
And as I say goodbye to Edinburgh for the final time, I wonder what I'm leaving behind. That glorious city with all its grandeur and splendour. I think I'll go back again one day.